advice to grads: be warriors, not wokesters. Scott Galloway, who's a current professor, I think, at NYU. The guy's an absolute stud of a guy. And I don't know if I want to read this whole thing. How long would it take me to read this story?
Go ahead, 1 minute.
I'm going to read this story.
Yeah.
I want to read this story. So check this out. I'm a fast reader, so we'll go through it together.
Oh, you're going to read the whole?
I'm going to read this. I'm going to read this. Last week on my way to eat, Jack's wife, Frida, awesome, in Soho, a young woman in purple gown with older versions of herself until nearly ran me over. It's that time of year. Approximately 4 million young adults and their loved ones will be forced to listen to someone my age tell them how to clean up the mess of our generation's leaving for them, right? My bromide: be warriors, not wokesters. Be mentally and physically warriors. Lift heavy weights and run long distances in the gym and in your mind. Many tasks you'll be asked to perform early in your career will be tedious. Don't do what you are asked to do, but what you're capable of doing. Think of it as boot camp before being sent to battle, as there are millions of other warriors fighting to win the same region of prosperity. Get strong, really strong. You should be able to walk in a room and believe you could overpower, outrun, outlast every person in that room. By the way, I love that sentence right there. Let me read it one more time. You should be able to walk into a room and believe you could overpower, outrun, or outlast every person in that room. What a great word, outlast. My first job was at Morgan Stanley Dean Witter. Great place to have a first job at. I wasn't as well educated as the other junior analysts. My fault. UCLA is a sink or swim place. I decided to do neither and smoke pot and tread water. Anyway, at Morgan, every other week I'd go to work Tuesday mornings and not leave until Wednesday night. Go to work Tuesday morning and not leave work till Wednesday night. Nobody was at home waiting for me. I had no real hobbies. And in your 20s, if you don't tell yourself otherwise, you can work 30 hours straight easily. 30 hours straight, this guy, right? Send a message to your colleagues that you came to play. Many of you will have a gag reflex at my boomer capitalist mentality or some bullshit. No, it's America, a platform to deploy skills and grit to add value and garner resources. Every day America becomes more like itself and becomes a better country for people who have resources or influence. And what of balance? Fine. Many people who thoughtfully calibrate the trade-off and fashion a good life for themselves and their families without being obsessed with work and money. Assume you are not that person. If you are in your 20s and reading this newsletter, you don't want balance. You're after influence and relevance. The world isn't yours for the taking, but for the trying. Try hard, really hard. Then he goes into Stoicism, talking about the power of Stoicism, meaning control your emotions, all that other stuff. Balance is a myth. There are only trade-offs. Having balance at my age is a function of lacking it at your age, your call. Let me read that one more time. Having balance at my age, he's a boomer right now. He's an older guy. Having balance at my age is a function of lacking it at your age, meaning grads, 22-year-olds. Your call. Personal life, work. The monk warrior. Intelligence is the ability to hold two contrary thoughts concurrently. This sounds easier than it is. Our brains are wired for quick assessment. We're descended from millions of generations of creatures whose ability to synthesize novel stimuli with a lifetime's data and formulate a faster-than-thought response kept us from becoming another creature's dinner. Until recently, when strangers encountered each other, only one left alive. But that feature is also a bug. When we react faster than thought, we don't react thoughtfully. We optimize for short-term emotional satisfaction rather than long-term prosperity. Let me say that one more time. We optimize for short-term emotional satisfaction rather than long-term prosperity. There's a lot of discussion, rethought, what it means to be woke. Some of it is well-founded. Some of it is hyperbole. Yes, be awake to the privileges and prejudices that surround you, and rigorously honest about the world you're inheriting. But the word has lost its original meaning. Beyond the media noise, an insidious pattern is emerging in the academic and professional setting. The instance on filtering everything through the lens of personal identity and experience. The prioritization of victimhood. The belief that to be offended is to be right. Structural racism is real, and our economics. He covers that, so go a little bit lower. There's a part of it I really want to cover here. Reacting to every slight and demanding satisfaction from every insult is what system wants you to do. Joining a Twitter mob, seizing on a hapless middle manager or an out-of-touch English professor may feel like justice, but it's just a cheap drip of dopamine lost in an ocean of social media profits. Be a warrior. Before you resort to violence, make a thoughtful assessment. Register the intention of go a little lower what he says, accomplishments. There's a part of it that I love what he said. He says, in life, he gives it to three different things. Go lower, go lower, lower, go lower. There's three things he said. He says, at your age, it's about relationship, it's about fitness, and it's about relationship, fitness. What's the other word he used? Work, relationship, and fitness. Commit to those three things at that age. Yeah. Work, relationship, and fitness. Yesterday, I'm talking to Tico, and Tico comes into the gym. I'd already read this article. He says, Dad, what's more important? This kid is 9 years old. He says, Daddy, what's more important? Is it important for me to work out my brain or my muscles? What a great question to ask a 9-year-old kid. I said, Daddy, what do you think? He says, I think it's brains. He says, Dylan spends too much time on his muscles. I think for me, it's brains. I said, really? Yeah. I said, you know what's important in life? He said, what? I gave him my whole lead, respect, improve, love, courage, wisdom, tolerance, understanding. I said, I read an article by this guy named Scott Galloway. I think I want to share it with you. What's that? He said, there's 3 things you got to put your time into. It's hard work, it's fitness, and it's relationships. Those are the 3 things you got to put your value into. The info he shared in this article was so powerful that it got me to transfer to my kids because it was that powerful of content to share. What are your thoughts on this article?
You know, he's so articulate, so thoughtful. It took a lot of guts for him to write that, and clearly these are his beliefs. But to stand up like that as a professor at NYU, it'd be interesting to see what the reaction from his colleagues is. But, you know, how can you argue against what he said? How can you take anything, what he laid out in that newsletter, how could you make a rational argument against any of it? Here's the answer. You cannot. Okay? And right now the country is divided into 2 different types of people. It's people like that follow the doctrine of what he is talking about here and want to excel, want to achieve, want to bust their ass. If things don't work out, if you fail along the way, it happens. You dust yourself off and you keep going. That's what's called America. And then you have this other loud minority, that wants everything handed to them. They want to point out all the imbalance and everything. I think there's a tipping point at some point in this country. I'm praying that there is. You have another voice of reason that's out there, Bill Maher, and I've seen Scott Galloway
Love what works he's doing right now.
And I've seen Galloway on his show, and he had a great point. He was on Bill Maher's show in March, and here's how he describes wokeism. He goes, what we have right now is an industrial shaming culture, making a caricature of comments and then using that to extract to an ugly place so you can get virtue points. And the moment you're offended, you feel like you're right, you know, that you have the right to be right about the issue. So I hope his voice gets stronger, gets louder. I just don't think rational Americans can take much more of this. We have a situation in our city right now in Manhattan Beach that's reaching a very, very critical tipping point, having something to do with what happened in the city over 100 years ago that nobody that lives there now had anything to do with it, involving this place called Bruce's Beach. And it was once owned by a black family, and then they lost it, and now they're going to get it back, et cetera. But it's turned into something really, really ugly. So, you know, if you're a concerned citizen, you're reaching out to the city council, and I'm emailing them saying, hey, look, it's time for common sense to prevail. You know, because there's no common sense out there anywhere. There's just in politics, in the media, or anywhere. So kudos to him. He's a voice of reason. And like I said, I just don't think you can argue with it, even though it goes against everything that his fellow professors believe.
Adam, what are you thinking?
Yeah, mad respect to Scott Galloway here. I think when he talks about work, fitness, and relationships, something that I always talk about is, you know, mind, body, soul. So like, obviously, you know, work your mind, work your body, and, you know, be fit, but work your soul. That's relationships and being a good person and focusing on what you're doing. So respect on that. I don't think there's anyone who would argue with the power of mind, body, soul, or in his case, work, fitness, relationships. Something that stuck out to me with that is the millions of years of quick reactions and quick processing stimuli to say, oh shit, that's a saber-toothed tiger, I gotta run. Or, oh my God, that's a dinosaur, I gotta go. And that's essentially the good and the bad of what we have today with all the Twitter mob and the keyboard warriors and the feelings on your fingertips is you could see something, boom, comment, I hate that guy. Oh, he's a piece of shit. Oh, he should be canceled. Like, the quick nature of being able to just basically authorize your feelings to the outside world because of this, you know, we could say a lot of good things about this, but this basically can get you in a lot of trouble too. So the Twitter mob and the cancel culture mob is a real thing these days. And I totally agree with Scott. The problem is, you know, Gen Z, who is basically who he's talking to, because this is at a graduation speech. Where is this exactly?
No, he just wrote it.
Okay, but this is advice to grads.
Absolutely.
Who are graduating college. So your daughter just graduated. She's Gen Z. Do you know the other word for the Gen Z? Like, I'm a millennial. You're a Gen X. You're a Gen X, right? You know the other word for Gen Z is the iGen, as in iPhone generation. Like, there's an entire generation of people called the iJet, meaning they're born with an iPhone in their hand. So as much as I want to understand where he's coming from, you've got millions and millions and millions of young Americans, young people around the world that are born with this literally in their hand, okay? And it's hard to escape this. It's hard to say, yeah, I totally, I'll check my feelings and process it and give it 24 hours, and then like, you used to talk about, you told a story about if you were gonna fight with your wife, and if before you had a phone, and you were leaving the office, you'd have a half hour to process it and cool off. Now these days, it's like, fuck you, I'm on my way home, and now it's like, take a freaking second and relax. That's also the problem with having this and everything at your fingertips is that you can just respond to anything immediately. You see something online, comment, dislike, cancel, and that's the good and the bad of having the iPhone and being an iGen
And
person.
I think that's one of the reasons why he and so many others are pushing the concept of Stoicism. Stoicism to me is a very necessary thing to be taught nowadays. Kai, is there schools that teach Stoicism as a course, not just like in a philosophy course? Like, is there a course you can take in school about how to be a Stoic, or no? Is there?
Probably not in school.
Probably not in school, right? I think there's so much benefit to it. I read Meditations years ago. I don't know how many years ago.
Marcus Aurelius.
Let me tell you, I've read it so many times. Have you had a chance? You've
You
had
read
a chance.
that? Yeah, you told me to get it. I read that before I came
So
to
Meditations, when I read it, I'm like, man, a part of me watching my dad, it's a part of like, he is a natural Stoic, right? There's a lot of benefits to thinking that way, because nowadays, if you are not a Stoic and you don't know how to control your emotions, you will be driven insane, constantly worried about things you have zero control over. The ability to manage your emotions on things you have no control over is such an invaluable skill set today. It is so valuable today for your career, for your relationships, for being an investor, for being an entrepreneur, for being a businessman, for being a human being, for being a parent, in every possible way. It's a lot of work, but I love the article. By the way, I just sent the link in the chat box. If you're looking at it, you can go subscribe to his newsletter. I highly recommend you going out there and doing that. He's got a lot of great commentary out there as well.
Did you ever see this before?
What's that?
This
things you control, things you don't control.
Things you can control, things that matter, and then at the tipping point in the very middle, that's where you should focus. Meaning,
control what matters.
If you can't control it, you can't control it. If it doesn't matter, then why are you focusing on it?
So stay control.
So focus on things you can control and that matter. If you can't control it, and if it doesn't matter, why are you spending time on it?
Brilliant. So if you enjoyed this little short segment from the podcast that we did, here's another short segment to watch. Or if you want to see the entire podcast, click over here. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.